We have a Q&A. There's going to be a QR code right up here on the screens. 3, 2, and actually they're right here behind me. Sorry, these screens. So you guys can scan them, send in your questions. We're going to go through as many as we can in the next hour. So please bear with us. If we don't get to your questions, don't worry. The speakers are here with us for the rest of the day and tomorrow, so you can go up to them personally and ask your question. But we are going to jump right into it, okay? Does that sound good? All right, don't fall asleep. I know it's after lunch. These are going to be great. These are your questions we're answering, so please bear with us. Okay, first question. I want to introduce you to our panel. Obviously, we have Pastor Rob Verdine, who's going to be teaching our last session of the day today. So welcome, Pastor Rob. We have Pastor Pat Lazovich, all the way from Arizona. He'll be teaching tomorrow. He'll be closing out our conference. And then we also have Pastor Ed, who taught earlier today. And then Pastor Al says goodbye. He had to go and teach at a conference tomorrow in Tennessee, so he flew out right after lunch, and he was just very blessed to be with you guys this weekend, and I say weekend, but really this Thursday almost to the weekend, Friday, and he was just super encouraged by this conference. So we left him with a great taste in his mouth as he goes and ministers to more in Tennessee. All right, so we're going to go through these questions as they have come up. The first question is, what advice would you have for someone serving faithfully in church for some time, but is feeling stuck in shallow fellowship and surface-level Christianity? That's a good one. We're starting with a strong one.
Yeah, I think it's pretty common to hear people in ministry. Maybe you've heard your wife say, I don't have any friends. I won't ask for a show of hands, but I bet it's pretty common. It can be common that, we're spread thin. And I know we've been in Corvallis 30 years, and it might have been 15 years ago, I heard my wife saying, gosh, I just feel like our relationships are shallow. And it might not answer the question specifically, but it's the way I was led to answer it was, we chose a couple different couples that we love, and we decided we were going to go deeper with a few people very purposefully in our lives. And we've done that now for about 15 years, and I'm so thankful to see my wife have deep friendships. But that's very purposeful. If a month goes by and we haven't had them for dinner, we're having them for dinner. Or we're trying to get together with them, and we're being purposeful about not just having shallow, but having some relationships that are deeper. Maybe that's something to think about.
Were they also talking about their relationship with the Lord, correct?
Yeah.
So I would say download the Bible app and get the reading programs from Calvary Church, and we have two different ones from our church. But get involved and get in your Word. I mean, if you're in your Word every day, the Lord has an opportunity to speak to you, to change you, to pull you out of that funk, I think. And, I think that's so important to be in our Word.
Yeah. Can you say the question again? Because I think I heard it one way. Say it again.
Yeah, so if you've been serving in ministry for a while, what do you do when things start to feel maybe surface level in your walk with the Lord, or surface level Christianity? Where
Oh, well, they already handled that. That's good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Too, Josh, I think the Charlie Kirk style is you have to set the mic down each time.
No. Okay. Okay, so next question. If you have one thing you could tell your younger self as a warning, what would it be? As a warning. And I understand that you guys are all still very young, but think of a younger time.
So a lot of things come up. Like it's almost like a slot machine where you see the things turning. Okay, what's going to hit? Because you learn so much. You learn so much over time. And I know that it feels like if you were warned ahead of time or you knew ahead of time, you could avoid those things. But those things are actually the mistakes and areas of your life that you're going to grow in. So I want to release some burden from that, because it's like, well, if you told me the 10 things to avoid, then I would just avoid those 10 things. But then you'd avoid 10 areas of really good development and growth and pain and discipleship from the Lord. But that being said, I would say a couple of things. The first one as a pastor and a church planner is just don't take everything so serious. It is not, most things are not that big a deal, even though they feel like they're a big deal. And because of that, you let circumstances and difficulties move you and shake you, when now if I look back and say, well, what was the big problem in year 2 of this church? I really have no idea what the big problem was in year 2. I don't remember, but I can tell you it was a big deal when I was going through it. And so if I could just trust the Lord more and trust myself less, that would be a piece of information, of a guidance I would give to a younger Ed. The second one, and this is equally important in my home, is Ed, this is very important, and you got to grasp this in the personality you have and everything, and that is, just because, with your family and your kids, just because you're there physically doesn't mean you're there. So there's an important cognitive, intentional, right now you can make in your life to not only be there physically, but to be there present completely. And I have a lot of illustrations of that, but one I remember taking my daughter to the swings and pushing her on the swings with one hand, and on the phone dealing with something on the other hand. Let me just say, whatever I was dealing with on the phone, I'm sure that person doesn't come to the church anymore, maybe doesn't even live in Colorado, whatever, but my daughter's still my daughter. And so I should have just left the phone in the house and pushed my daughter on the swing. Those types of things, very, very important for me. That's what I would say.
I would say to myself, don't take criticism so seriously to where it devastates and you can't go on. On the flip side, don't take flattery at all, right? Be careful of that, because hey, especially when you're young, somebody says something to you and then you start thinking you're all that, and the Lord will make sure you know you're not all that. Yeah. So, but that would be my big things for me.
Yeah, I would definitely tell my younger self to take a day off, a full day off. We started the church 30 years ago, and I didn't take a day off. And about 15 years into the church, I had maybe 10 years in, I had a night, a Saturday night, whereas 7 o'clock turned into 8 o'clock and I wasn't ready for Sunday morning. I started to be unable to formulate thoughts. It's a very scary place to get, where mentally you're breaking down. I'd gone like a 10-year period without taking a day off, or not taking a regular day off. And I broke down. I had to call someone by 11 o'clock at night and say, I can't seem to formulate thoughts. And that was the beginning. That summer, our church told me I needed to take a month off. And then every summer, I started taking the time off that I needed to be rested. But weekly, I started practicing a complete day of rest. And what happens is, when you open up an email on a day of rest, it can be like a nuclear cloud. You're supposed to be resting, but you open that one email and the nuclear cloud just goes off on your mind. And maybe you're with your family, but you're not there. I received a letter in my box before this conference. I haven't opened it yet. I'm going to open that when I get home, after the weekend. There are some letters I only open after Sunday. But I would tell my younger self to take a day off. And I would like you to ask yourself, and I'd like you to talk about, as husband and wives, do you take a full day off? And here's a quote. I think it's such a powerful quote. God is so serious about you taking a day off that it's on the same list with murder and adultery. That's pretty serious. You have to have a day off. Another way to look at it is, if you just keep winding the watch, you keep winding, those springs are just going to go everywhere eventually, right? I guess that's an old watch picture, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, I would definitely tell myself, take a day off. I would tell you, if you're not getting a full day off and you want to be refreshed, go home and start taking a full day every week off. You'll see a huge difference.
That's great. Next question. I know my pastor is needed at other places to speak, but it seems that he is more of a guest speaker than a senior pastor. How do I keep my focus on the Lord?
So that person's bummed out about their pastor.
It sounds like this person is bummed out that their pastor is guest speaking outside of their church. So how do they keep their focus on the Lord?
That's a really good question. I think part of it, I can look at my own ministry and see that could be asked of this particular church. And I think it's important, first of all, to remember that your relationship is with the Lord and not with your pastor. And we live in a culture that kind of elevates men, and we sort of participate in it and elevate them ourselves. And so we want to keep that part in check, while at the same time recognizing that God has given our pastors to us, and we love our pastors. We receive from them, like Jesus said, the sheep hear the shepherd's voice. So there is that relational aspect. Now, of course, if in the context of this ministry, we have a team of 15 pastors here. So Ed is not the only man that serves the flock. And even if I was here every weekend, I would not be the only man that serves this congregation, even every week being teaching. And so how do you keep in a context where you have a traveling pastor? This is a simple answer, but I hope you receive it. You share your pastor. You share him. Because God is obvious, if he is where he needs to be by the will of God, and I can say that in my own life, I am where I need to be by the will of God, prayerfully. In my life, if you only saw how many times I have to say no to an invitation, which is very difficult for me, but I do, because I love my church, I love serving our team, I love giving leadership. I just got back from some time away, and I always like to tell the church, it's good to be away, but it's always good to be back, because I love my church too. But it may be, this might be a hard word for you to receive, but you may be elevating your pastor to a place in your life that he doesn't belong. Because the team, even if you're in a smaller church and your pastor's doing that, like, you should probably sit down with him and let him explain to you, so you don't think that he's doing it capriciously, or maybe he is doing it capriciously and he needs to stop. But if you trust your pastor to be able to say yes and have the freedom and be able to be used on a broader context, you keep your eyes. How do you keep your eyes on the Lord? You keep your eyes on the Lord. It's your choice. It's you that have a personal walk with the Lord. And it could be, and to some degree, you had a walk with the Lord before you met your pastor, if you just came into a new church or something. But just always keep your eyes on him. And how do you do that? Without that part of the question, you read your Bible every day. You pray every day. You obey what you read and hear in prayer every day. And you'll keep your eyes on the Lord no matter what happens.
I think it's a good question. For me, I was gone from our church 2 weeks ago. I came home, taught, did a baptism, and then came here. So you might be someone from my church asking that question. But you know what? I think an important thing, for me, and I had a young pastor, he hadn't been in ministry very long, was asking me about, should I go and guest teach? So a little bit different look, but if your pastor is invited someplace, number one, that's a recognition that you have a good pastor, because somebody asked him to come and teach someplace else. So that's number one. Number two, do you know what it does for his own teaching ministry? Because now he feels encouraged, because somebody asked me to go teach someplace else. Somebody recognized that gift within me. And when he goes and shares, when he comes home, he's going to be a better teacher. And so like Ed said, share your pastor. But if he's gone all the time, like if he's only home one weekend a month in October, you might have a conversation with him.
Yeah, I would say too, pray for your pastor. It's easy to say, we all nod our head and go, oh yeah, pray for your pastor. I would really say, if you don't pray for your pastor, pray for your pastor. If you see things in your pastor like that, pray for him. We have 4 20-year-olds at our church. It's such a joy. 4 20-year-olds that are teaching for me in the pulpit. 20-year-olds getting up in the pulpit and teaching. Well, one of the wealthier men in our church told me if that continues, he's going to leave. You're just like, We have 20-year-olds being raised up in the pulpit, and you're upset because he's a very successful businessman, and he thinks that I should have someone very successful next to me that always teaches who's absolutely the best. And it's hard. It's hard to make the right decisions. It's hard to make decisions, of being gone and being home. And your pastor's not above making the wrong decisions. Pray for him. God can change his heart. He can see he's being gone too much. Pray for him. And I would hope anyone on my staff, if they thought I was being gone too much, I would hope at every level of leadership, they'd come talk to me. Our leadership, I try to foster that. I tell all of our leadership, if you see anything in me, come talk to me. So I would encourage you to have an authentic conversation with them.
It's great answers. This one, Pastor Ed, I think you can answer. It is the next highest voted, but why did Calvary Aurora change its name?
Why did we change our name?
We did, yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, it's a great question. We changed our name because our name needed to be changed. The name of the church is not as important as the substance of the church. And so with us, we were known as Calvary Chapel Aurora, and we've always been known as Calvary Aurora, but we're in a new season of life, and people don't even know what Calvary is. And the chapel was generating all of these phone calls asking if they could use our wedding chapel or as a funeral chapel. And there wasn't an association, Calvary Chapel, with church anymore. And so we decided to do two things with our name. The first one was to include the word church, so there's no question whatsoever in our community that we are a church. And this is a place of everything that you think of with the word church, we want to be that to them, so we want them to know that. Then when it comes with everything online, anything online, Google, anything, any AI, we attached my name into the name of the church, Calvary Church with Ed Taylor, because people were searching for us by my name. And so that's all we wanted to do, is to put our name, because we are on the radio in our teachings around the country, but especially here in Denver. Many people that are looking for a church have heard my name perhaps on the radio, and they don't even know. They only remember your name, and they put it in, and we see that generating on our search. We were looking at the stats on our all that stuff behind the scenes, which is amazing when you start looking at it, that we just decided to put my name so that it could find us more easily. But I can assure you, from all the names, because we were Calvary Christian Fellowship, Aurora Incorporated or something, because when we first started, we didn't have permission to use Calvary Chapel, but we were already a church, so we had to come up with some kind of name. Then Pastor Brian Michaels approved, I still have the letter signed by him, I can be a Calvary Chapel, so we changed our name then, and then we shortened it to Calvary Aurora, and then I'm just always fishing, and sometimes you got to change the hooks, that's all. You got to change the bait, and you have to know what's happening in your community so that you can communicate to your community, because that's actually why you're there, isn't it? And so we've maintained, I think, our identity, the core concepts that we are as a church, but we've also made a lot of changes to non-essential things to minister to our community. And so that's a abbreviated version of why, and who knows, in the future we might change again. But if you walk in, and we might change the carpet, we might change the light, but we're still gonna love you, teach you the word verse by verse, visit you in the hospital, officiate your memorials of your family. We're gonna officiate weddings because we're a church.
And aren't we so thankful for our heritage? Aren't we so thankful for our Calvary Chapel heritage and what Pastor Chuck gave us, the teaching of the Word and the openness to the Spirit and the return of Christ. And I'm so thankful. And it's interesting, from the very beginning of our movement, that never seemed to bother Chuck. If Mike wanted to call his church Horizon, or Greg wanted to call it, Harvest, that's kind of from the beginning. People were trying different names, and yet we're all one family. Yeah.
I was wondering if that was PTSD from the lady who called and asked if you're a wheelchair.
I didn't think of that fast enough. That's good.
That's good. That's funny. Next question. How do you balance, or how did you balance the early days of church planting? Things like having a secular job, your family, and obviously the church plant. What would you do differently?
Well, I love that question because I love that question because I had a very demanding corporate job in planting the church. But again, part of our heritage with my pastor was to make sure that I wasn't a burden to the church. So working was non-negotiable. I'm going to take care of my family. I'm going to put food on the table. And I don't want to ever have to put an undue burden on the church in being concerned about me because I can work. And I had a very successful job. It was very demanding, though, 24/7. I worked for an ambulance company 24/7. And I needed to learn how to go with the flow of what was required of me and prioritize my life in such a way where my highest priorities got most of my attention. And I needed to learn that I couldn't do everything. None of us can, even to this day, I can't do everything. I can't make everyone happy. I can't do everything all that I want to do at once. I need to prioritize in my life and be okay with giving God my best, even if some things have to wait till tomorrow or next week. And so in working, I prayed for favor. You know, Daniel, Nehemiah, they both got favor with their boss. So I prayed for favor with my boss. And wouldn't you know it, God gave me favor with my boss, which gave me a little more flexibility. And in the early days when I was younger, I knew that my marriage I couldn't sacrifice my marriage. I couldn't sacrifice the time with my family. The only real place that I could sacrifice was my sleep. So after the whole day was done, and I worked all day, and I ate dinner with the kids, and went to their games or practices or whatever, and had some quiet time with Marie when we put the kids to bed, then the only time I had left was my sleep. And so I used that to study, to pray, mostly for studying. And I just had to learn that God has called me to this. He will sustain me in it. And I know I can't do everything, which is hard. Actually, it was hard for me. I don't know that I learned it as fast as I should have. But I know that my hope wasn't one day I won't have to work, because then that's kind of a false hope. I don't know if one day I won't have to work. I don't know what God's going to do in his church. But as I learned to go, God, I give you my best, and I prioritize my life with you at the center, he was able to get us through, and I'm so appreciative. Marie's not here right now, but I'm also so appreciative of my kids and Marie for coming along the journey with me, where we all did it together, and we sacrificed together, and we were able to work it out. But prioritizing and then giving your time to the highest priorities is super important, and that's seek first the kingdom of God. And making sure you're seeking the Lord, and then he'll give you the answer. One day you'll study, and one day you go to the zoo with the kids, and you'll just see it all flow, and you'll never feel you're just being pulled in you'll never feel like you had it all perfect and together, and that's normal. Did you guys both work and plant the church? Did you?
Yeah, when I planted a church, although my church plant was a failure, but when I planted a church, I was in business, so I made pottery for a living. My wife and I made pottery for 15 years. Anyway, we're running a business, planning a church, and that's really hard. And for me, here was a struggle for me. I was passionate about pottery because that's what I did and loved it and passionate. And I was passionate about teaching the word. And it was such a struggle in my personal life. And I was struggling every week just to get through either one. And I highly respect pastors who are bivocational, because you guys are awesome. I couldn't do it very long. So when the church offered to pay us, and it was minimal, I look back and I made a really dumb decision, but I said, honey, we're going full-time in the ministry. And she said, how are we gonna survive? And I said, I have no idea, but God is gonna supply. And he did, but yeah, I couldn't divide the two. Maybe it was because of what I was doing and trying to be passionate and share my passion about both. And so that's kind of my story. I had to quit early.
Yeah, I grew up an electrician from the time I was a teenager, and became a journeyman electrician, and that's a noble occupation. That's a great. I'm thankful for that trade. And I remember I was in Los Angeles, and I remember I was putting pipe on a wall just all day long, just running home runs from the panel all day long, 1 inch, inch and a half runs down this wall. And I remember my hands were black with grease. It's funny the memories we have. I don't know why I have this memory, but I don't know why I didn't wash my hands that day before I ate, but I remember I was eating an In-N-Out burger, and I was sitting on the curb, and I remember the white lines on my hand from the hamburger grease. And I remember God just stirring me that I have more for you. I have more for you than being in an empty warehouse by yourself every day. And there was I remember, have these memories when, as soon as you asked that question, I remember working and longing to be in the ministry. I remember coming to the church and longing to be full-time in ministry. And I got the opportunity to be part-time, and then three-quarter time ministry, and then full-time. But I remember God brings back those memories. Remember when you were just longing to do what you get to do? Don't forget that.
That's right.
Don't forget how badly you wanted to be in ministry. And I have to believe there's probably some of you that are bivocational, and you're longing to, if I could just use all my energy for the Lord. Lord sees that. And like Ed said, it's outside of your control. It's outside of his control. But I know he sees that longing in you. If you're at this conference and you're longing, I know God sees that. There may be something going on. There may be a step of faith required of you that is the reason that longing is in there. And for us, the step of faith looked like we lived off of our house that we sold, an inheritance. And then the church provided gas money. And then the church provided gas money and food. And then the church provided gas money, food, and rent. And then the church, and we just inched our way into ministry.
It's a really good question, too, for a senior leader to think through, because almost everyone in your church that's serving is living out that reality. It's not just you. So all of the precious volunteers of our church who really want to serve and really want to go to a higher capacity, they also have been working all day, or they worked all night and came and served, and to have an empathy and a compassion to remember where they're coming from. It'll change your expectations of them and your demands of them, because you're also going through that. So to be sensitive to that, as you were asking the question, or as I was answering the question, I was just remembering, when I'm giving you the answer, I don't want to make it sound like it was easy. It was not easy. It was challenging. However, the Lord gave me the strength. And so for all those that are serving in the church and giving of themselves, this will be the reality for the rest of their life, because they're not called to full-time. And some churches will never grow to a capacity to have a large staff. That's just the way it is. And that's God's will for a particular body. But everyone in the church is serving, they're working full-time. It's a really beautiful thing, because I use this to stir up our team from time to time that get paid by the tithes and offerings of the church. And that is, there are people at work right now just waiting for 5 o'clock to get to church. And there are times where there are people at church working that are just waiting for 5 o'clock to get out. Yeah. And that can change. Your heart can change so much if you don't guard it and say, no, Lord, I love being here. I love serving. I know it's a long day. Like, I was watching our team last night and the volunteers, because after you guys left for the launch party, we're all here setting up the chairs. I mean, it's just making this place a beautiful place instead of a goofy place. And we're all here, and we're all serving and stacking and goofing off and also very tired. But it was such an encouragement, because there was no murmuring, we were just all serving the Lord, and we got out of here, and it was like, okay. And the Lord sustained us, and it was good for us. But good question to consider, not just for yourself, but for everyone that you serve with, that work all day and serve in high capacity. There's any capacity in your church. Really good question that as you pray, it'll give you empathy for the people that you serve with.
It's great. Next question, next highest voted one. What do you value most in the role of a second or assistant pastor?
I would think the biggest thing would be loyalty, and somebody that you could go to, you can trust, And that person who also can be your confidant and be the one person, like I know our second, he just retired, which made me really mad. But he was the guy, I mean, I would run to him and I'd go, I got this great idea. I want to do this. And if it was, sometimes most of the time he would agree, but occasionally he'd go, I wouldn't do that. And I would think, I'm not sure he's right. So I would do it. And sometimes I'd listen to him and not do it, but sometimes I would do it. But here's what I never heard from him. If I did it and it failed, I never heard, I told you so. He always had my back no matter what. And yet he was the one person that could also talk me off a ledge. He was a guy who could speak into my life in great ways. I valued that. And it comes from that loyalty and trust. And so, and some of that got built obviously over the years. But now I feel like a little bit empty in ministry because he retired. And it's kind of hard for me. So pray that I get through the next few years and find that other person.
Well, I would just say loyalty. Yeah, to have someone helping you that is loyal to you, has your back. I have a guy next to me. He's a retired engineer, and I'm so thankful for him because not very many engineers are people. They're systems. They're systems people, but he's a...
Are there any engineers in the house? All right.
All right,
Is he right?
Yep. I answer for you. Yep, he's right. But I'm so thankful for the people that serve with me. That, by the way, that's something that can change your marriage from this conference. Start telling your spouse frequently that you're thankful for them. It'll change your marriage. It's such a little simple thing you could take away from Refresh. I mean, every time she makes the bed, just go, thank you so much. Every time your wife makes dinner, every time you see the living room cleaned up, just go home from this and just start saying thank you all the time. You'll see your marriage change. And it's the same with our staffs, just telling our staffs, telling the people that we depend on, thank you. It's amazing. Just even asking the question and answering it makes me want to just, when I see Scott, just tell him I'm so thankful. He's holding things down while I'm away. So thankful for him. He's got my back. He's always an encouragement to me. And I'm so thankful. 30 years I've had several, I think 3 times now we've switched leaderships. And one of those seasons I had an assistant pastor that it wasn't like that. And so God uses that too because he makes you really, really thankful when you do have someone that's loyal and has your back.
The first part of the question I would want to rephrase and say, I want you to think of the question, not just second, but third, fourth, like the people that you are surrounded with in ministry that serve with you, whether they are able to take a salary or they're just lay leaders and elders. I want you to broaden your scope a little bit, not just looking for the man, but looking for men and women to serve alongside of you in key areas of leadership. Although I do appreciate and understand the question, but those of you that serve in your church, those of you that are elders, those of you that are looking to reproduce yourself, I would want you to include that in your thinking as well, not just for a pastor and an assistant pastor. So for me, I'm looking for 3 things that are essential besides the practical, setting aside the practical side, just on a personal level. Number 1, I really want a man to serve alongside of me as a pastor and elder that loves God supremely. They love the Lord God with all their heart, soul, and mind. I know that seems like a given, but it's not. It's not a given. There's so many other things that fit that category. I don't want someone that just wants a job. I don't want someone that just wants to work at a church. I don't want someone that just wants to exercise their gifts. I want someone that's doing it motivated by love of God, like that God is everything to them to the best of their ability. Number 2, I'm looking for someone that loves this church, this particular fellowship, Calvary Church, Colorado, right?
Calvary Aurora.
Calvary Aurora. Calvary Christian Fellowship. I still call it Calvary Aurora in my mind, Calvary Chapel all the time, but The reason I say that is this is a unique church. It's unlike any other church in here. I mean, we have similarities, but this community's different. The draw is different. The leadership is different. The direction, everything about this is unique. And because it's unique, you really do need to love the people of this church as much as or more than I do. Because if you don't love the people here, I can't serve with you because I love the people here. And I want you to partner with me in serving this church family self-sacrificially. I don't want people making fun of our city. I don't want people making fun of the people that live in Aurora or the gangs or the jokes. This is our community. We don't make fun of the people we're trying to reach. We don't make light of the drug addiction and the alcoholism and the crime. These are what God saves people out of. If you don't love this church, I can't help you with that. And maybe if you've been in this church for a while and under my teaching and leadership, you haven't been able to love it, maybe it's partly my fault. But if you can't love this church, you can't just say, well, I love the church. I'm glad you love the church. I do too. But do you love this church? Because if you don't, you won't have the phrase would be, you won't make it. You just won't make it. You just won't make it. And then thirdly, I also ask for that second, third, fourth, those around me, do you love me and my wife and my children? You can't say, well, I love you, Ed, but I can't stand your wife. You won't make it here because my wife is me. This is my wife. And I can't say, I was going to say I respect you if you don't do that, but that's hard to respect if you treat my wife like that. So I understand you may have a position in that, but I can't serve with you if you don't love my wife. I mean, and again, I'm talking, if we're not in sin and we're not rebellious, I'm not saying you love our sin or like if we're really bad people, but I don't believe we are. I believe we walk in the Spirit. We make mistakes and fall and stumble, but like if you don't love my children, they are my children and they're walking with the Lord. If you don't have an agape love and expressing that toward us, then when I make a mistake, you won't forgive me, or you won't think the best of me, or you won't give me a chance to recover, or you won't, and because that's what I'm giving you. I'm not asking from you a second, third, or I'm not asking from you anything I'm not going to give to you. I love the Lord. I love this church. And if we're having this conversation about you joining the team, then it's demonstrated that I love you and see fruit in your life. Like it's obvious. So I want that environment I'm not asking for unconditional, like just approve of love. Approve of sin and I can get away with anything. That's not love. So I'm not asking for like unconditional, and neither are the men here, but I'm not asking for unconditional loyalty or unconditional commitment, but I'm asking for love, the love of God through us, because love covers a multitude of sins. Love gives us the opportunity and pauses us enough to say, it's not about you and it's not about me, it's about the glory of God. So how can we work this out? And if you love me, you won't betray me. And I have had some really deep pain in this. The worst pain I've ever experienced in life has come from the people very, very close to me in this church. Yeah. And, you can't harden your heart because of somebody. I've been stabbed in the back. I've been stabbed in the front. I've been hugged and some third arm was carving my heart out and saying, oh, by the way, and my wife, my children have been attacked, on and on. However, my Savior was crucified, and I haven't been crucified, so He's going to give me the strength to carry on. And over the years, I want it to be mutual. I want you to know that I'm committed. If I haven't demonstrated that commitment, then I need to, but I think I have. I love you. I love the Lord. I love this church. I love you. It doesn't mean we're not going to have problems, but if we have that love, man, can you imagine how much progress we're going to make for the kingdom? Can you just imagine if we could just go forward? And I could use some examples that pop into my mind right now of people that have loved me and have given me the benefit of the doubt and have prayed for me, and we are able to work things out. And that is a testimony to the grace of God in their lives as much as in mine. So great question. It's so good.
Don't you think also, as you mentioned, that they need to love the church? Don't you think that they should say, this is the best church in town? Not the only church, but the best church in town. I think that's an important thing. I don't
even think that sometimes.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, but sometimes they don't, but they should have that heart.
I mean, it's just like it goes back to the pastor question. If it applies, like you go, well, I don't want to be in a church where the pastor's at other churches or conferences. Then you revert to, but do I love that guy? So I'm going to pray for him when he's over there, and I'm going to pray for him. And the church is not about you. So as soon as you and I can learn that the church is about God manifesting his love, and I would agree with you. I do think you have to value your church, but yeah, you were just setting me up. I mean, we could go on the road. You were setting me up really good. But yes, I think this is and when I say, I always this is my church. Like, this is my church. And what I mean by that is I don't own it or lead it or oversee it. This is where I'm discipled. This is where I'm growing. This is where my kids grew up. This is our church. This is where we grew up. This is what God's will is for our lives. And love to me is what I've been more and more. In the early days, I probably emphasized function. Mistake I made as a leader early on is I probably emphasized function and getting things done more than I did love. And through pain and difficulty and just being wrong and repenting of my sinful thoughts toward leadership, now love is much more important to me. The competency in doing the job, of course, but if we can love one another, we can make a lot of progress.
Yeah, we've talked about sharing our pastor, and I know this is a lot of volunteers and leaders from the church here. I want to say thank you to you guys for sharing your pastor with us. We do an Oregon conference called Shepherd the Flock. And over the last, I don't know what it's been now, 4 or 5 years, Ed has decided to come back and bring his whole family. And I just have to tell you, it is a incredible blessing to all of the pastors in Oregon that he is gone that week, that you are sharing him with us. It has made a difference in our state. And I even had it in my heart, Ed, just even when I said earlier, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming each year like that. It means so much to me. And I want to just thank you for putting on this conference too. This is a special, very special. I wanted to ask you not to applaud yet because I wanted to thank Ed. I wanted to thank Josh. I wanted to thank Ed. Sent me a video of all the volunteers this morning before anyone was here, that they were all up praying and singing over us. Ed had mentioned at lunch yesterday people that are taking off work to put this on. And the guys at the sound booth. No one ever thanks the guys at the sound booth. I want to thank you guys. Yeah, the sound, the media. Thank you guys. Yeah, we're truly, thank you.
All right, so we have a couple questions that are kind of going back and forth on this voting scale. So I think we're going to get at least both of them before the time's up. The first one is, there it goes. It switches again. Okay. We're going to go. Yeah, I know. They can see it. They're telling all their staff to vote. Okay. We're going to go with it. Have you had someone come to church in drag? And how did you or would you handle such a unique situation on a Sunday morning? We've also had another question that was on the side here. Have you had a gay couple attend your services? And I think both of them are close enough to where you can address or communicate your thoughts on both questions at once.
Such a great question. The answer to both of them is yes. Yes, we have. And you're welcome to attend this church. You're welcome to come. You probably won't stay very long because the truth will come from the pulpit. And the conviction of the Holy Spirit will hit. But we want to meet you, and we want to talk to you. And we don't want to prejudge you and have a baggage. I want to meet you and know your name and hear your story and see if God might not give me an opportunity to speak into your life. And we've seen that many times. That's part of the answer that I was sharing earlier, Josh, when I said, if you have to love this church, because this church welcomes sinners. That's how I was able to walk in the door. I was bad. I was so scared that someone would find out how bad I was and ask me to leave. But don't misunderstand my answer to that where sinners are welcome in this church, that doesn't mean that we approve of sin. In no way do I approve of the sins that wreck the heart of God and wreck others. I don't. But I also don't want to prejudge. If I don't want to jump to conclusions. I want to speak to the issue behind. I want to speak to the person struggling with their sexual identity. Or if not me, somebody on the team, somebody that God is going to, like if not me, I want to be able to teach them the Bible. I count it a significant privilege that they would trust this church with all, they know what's going on in their life. You know how it is. Nobody needs to convince you you're in sin. And you're walking into a church. Now, of course, if they think they're walking into a church where you say you're welcome and they think it's affirming, we're not an affirming church. No church should be, but we're not. We affirm the Bible and the love of Jesus. And isn't it interesting in the life of Jesus that sinners love to be around him? Yeah. And sinners were always around him, and he never compromised. He never became unholy. He was perfect in every way. And so in a hot button culture, whatever the sin of the day is, whatever the issue of the day is, as cultures change, we as the church, we need to grow in how we advocate the gospel into people's lives. And just recognize, again, if there may come a time where we see them and they're not responding, where in each revelation or in each conversation, we say, you can't call yourself a Christian and live in sin. And we would do that with any kind of sin that's revealed. Most people that walk into our churches that are living in sin, you can't see it. So it takes some time for it to be revealed. But in the cases that was mentioned in the question, they're readily seen. So it just kind of accelerates it a little bit. But in any sexual sin, so somebody comes in as an adulterer, we don't see that right away. But once we gain that knowledge, then the conversation has to shift toward holiness. And of course, the end of that conversation is this: repentance, or you're not allowed to be in fellowship according to the scriptures. You can't pretend to be a Christian. So the nuances of that, it's challenging and it's hard, but these are people. We're not talking about categories. We use the categories of their behavior, but they're people. And so if I get one opportunity, I'm not working in the world anymore, so my interfacing with that is very limited to some of you guys in the workplace too. And so to be able to minister to them and serve them, that is why I'm in this city. And I hope to see transformed lives. I hope to see the gospel penetrate hearts. I hope to see people that maybe, again, for that type of behavior to come into the church, something's going on. Maybe they're really close and the Holy Spirit can do something. But we will not approve of sin or affirm of sin, or we will not be in a position where we're overlook or neglect that. But we also won't be quick in our decisions. We need to pray. We need to ask the Holy Spirit to give us wisdom on how to serve each person individually and not lump people into categories and just be name calling, because then you forget you're talking to a person. And that's how we've handled it here. And I hope God will entrust us with more sinners so we can see more people saved.
About 15 years ago, we had a lady call in. She had listened to me on the radio and called in and wanted to kind of play Bible trivia. Anyway, I said, no, I don't do that. And she came in for a meeting, and I met with her in our sanctuary, and I'm talking to her, and she started the conversation with all of the hormone drugs she was taking. And I thought, I'm a little uncomfortable, why are you telling me this? And then she said, 20 years ago, I was a man. Well, now, this got me thinking, this was 15 years ago that this happened. So 35 years ago, this person had a sex change. That wasn't popular then, right? It wasn't in the front of the culture, any of that. So she got saved. This person got saved. Someone led her to the Lord. The person who led her to the Lord, she came out to her and said, hey, I was a man 20 years ago. That person said, I want nothing to do with you. I never want to speak to you again. A pastor in another church told her never to come back to the church. And so she was asking me, what do I do? And I thought, that's kind of a difficult question. She said, do I go back? Do I stay? And here's what she said. I've listened to you on the radio, so I trust you, and I will do whatever you tell me. I went, wow, that's a heavy responsibility. So I said, you know what? Let me pray about it and come back, So I'm asking everybody I know, like I'm writing everybody, what do I tell this lady? And there was a conference, and Pastor Chuck was there. So I went up to Pastor Chuck, and I go, hey, this lady come to our church, and I told him, in typical Pastor Chuck fashion, here's what he did. Oh, I'm so glad she went to your church and not mine. That helped. So I went back and you know, I sat down with her and I said, number one, I'm pretty blessed and amazed that you came to Jesus. Because obviously you think God made a mistake when he made you and, you know, some other things in her life. And so I said, I'm extremely blessed. And here's what I know. The Holy Spirit will guide you in what to do. I'm not going to tell you what to do. That's too big of a question for me. And you know what? I had a relationship with this lady, communication, I should say. Be careful. But for years after that, and she stayed walking with the Lord. And that blesses me, that she stayed with the Lord. So we don't know who's going to walk in our church. But I love what you said, Pastor Ed. They're people. And when I looked at her as a person, that made an entire difference. And so that's my drag story.
That's a little soundbite. That's my drag story. Okay. When I was before I was a high school pastor at Costa Mesa, I helped Greg Glory on Monday nights, and I have this memory of a older, very godly woman rebuking this young 20-year-old in a miniskirt and a very loose top. And she was so angry at her. How dare you come to church dressed like that? You're stumbling men. You're stumbling my husband. And this 20-year-old just was in tears and walked out of the church. And my wife and I followed her out, and she wasn't saved. She didn't even get to hear Greg Glory share the gospel because she was rebuked for the way she looked. And we spent the time outside the service getting to lead her to Christ and getting to share the gospel with her. And you know, we realized that God had drawn her there. And you know, at this topic of homosexuality, they say that what San Francisco is to men, Portland, Oregon is to women. So you can imagine in our state, I mean, it's lesbianism is just everywhere. In our city, I barely go out and don't see lesbians together. And if in our church, if two lesbians or homosexuals or someone in drag came in, I would hope, and I would hope in this church, and I would hope in your churches, I would hope they would be loved. I would hope they walk in and then our churches love them, that's their experience coming into the church. It's almost like they're waving a sign saying, will you love me? You know, and I would hope that our churches embrace them, love them, get to know them. You know, there's a lot of people in drag and homosexual lifestyle. They're really, really wonderful people. They're just broken. And, you know, there's a saying that says, first you have to catch a fish. Can you finish it? Yeah. Before you clean the fish. So I would hope we would be very loving to them. Now, if they cross a line and profess to be followers of Jesus Christ, now that starts a different relationship. And I would hope, again, that would start a very patient, very loving, very patient relationship, helping them to be discipled, helping them to come to the knowledge of the truth. So I would say as those people show up in your churches, just think of it like a giant sign, like God brought me here. You know, I need help. I'm broken. And I hope we'll love them to the point they get saved. And then I hope once they're saved, our churches could become the place that they become discipled. I've just got to baptize one of the kids in our community that struggles with homosexuality. I got to watch him, you know, come to the services. I got to watch him raise his hand. I got to be part of discipling him, and it was just a joy. When he came into the waters, man, I just hugged him. It was such a joy to get to see God draw him. And interestingly enough, maybe 4 years ago, he went on an Israel trip with us. Had his little rainbow flags on his backpack on our Israel trip. And you know what? Our whole Israel team just loved him that whole Israel trip. He was doing everything he could to get us to hate him. And we just loved him and loved him and loved him. We knew he wasn't saved, We just loved him that whole trip. And here, all these years later, he's still at the church and got saved and now got baptized. So what a joy. Yeah.
I know we're out of time. I just want to close the loop on all this. I don't want any misunderstandings that as you step into someone's messy life, that somehow you're compromising. Now you have to draw the lines, of course, in your own walk, but sin, I've always wanted just to pastor a church like this, and I want to pastor a church where a guy like me can walk into it and be saved. And although those particular sins that we are talking about were not my sins, I was a very bad person, and I was sinning in a whole different category of sin in my life, just as much rebelling against God than any of the things that we're talking about right now. And so the environment that I hope to create and hope to disciple in all of our lives is without compromise, to love someone, love someone in such a way where there is time. And I love the distinction, because I don't think I made the distinction, so that's where all of our answers really beautifully go together, where if they say they're a believer, that changes the conversation. Yeah. It changes the conversation because the Bible changed, not because because I yield to the Bible, and that changes the conversation. But man, that's such a great testimony. So good, man.
All right, so we have at least 2 more questions I want to get through.
We only have 1 minute.
Okay, well, I think it's really going to be good. I think we should just go for it. So I'm seeing there's at least 5, 6, 7 questions that are all surrounding this topic. And then there's a question that I think blends it all together. So I'm going to do my best to intertwine and weave this. But coming off of the discussion we just had about homosexuality, about how we minister to those that are living very outwardly loud, sinful lives in our churches, there's something recently. I'm going to start with a question that came in, just very honest, asking, they have a passion for politics. They have a passion for supporting Trump and the MAGA movement. But where does that line cross into idolatry? Where does your passion, how do you know when your passion crosses that line into idolatry? There's other questions about, should I host a political chapter in my church building in regards to Charlie's passing? Should I host TPUSA at my building? Is that right or wrong? But the question I think that really blends all of this together is, can you speak to the blending of Christianity and politics and how church leaders can navigate this divisive season while also leading their church well? And I think I bring this up because it's on the far end spectrum of what we just talked about. And I do think that we have a good handle as a church on how to receive, and even our learning, how to receive people who are walking with outward sin that's so blatant. But I also do think even just this person's honesty of asking, hey, I have a passion for this, but when does it start crossing the line to where this passion becomes idolatry and starts robbing from my faith? And I think as a church, it's really important that we address, even with what just happened recently, as clearly as we address what we just addressed in the same area.
Well, we're out of time, so.
And that's it, you're right. So let's pray. And just kidding.
Real quick, when you mention that, I think that as he's talking about the passion and how is he going to be careful, I would say the biggest caution is if you start promoting politics more than the gospel, then you've crossed that line. So you got to get, as a church, our main commission is to go and make disciples and give the gospel of Jesus Christ. First and foremost, that's what we're to do. Now, that's going to get involved in politics as you talk about things. Even just now, we just talked about homosexuality or the trans movement or all of these things, marriages. The church speaks to that, and I think we should stand strong in that. But when we start crossing the line into a huge political agenda, I don't want to offend somebody with politics. I don't mind offending them with truth. I don't mind giving them the truth and the gospel. But when we start walking that as a pastor, if I start walking that political line, there are going to be people who are going to shut down and never listen to me. And here's the whole thing. People, quote, on the other side of the aisle, if you want to say it that way, they're people. And they're people who need to get saved, and they're people who need to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I think that's the important thing. That's where we do and draw the line in our church.
I won't tackle it, but I'll just comment. You have to know your city, right? We have different churches represented here. I am in a city that I don't know if it's 70% Democrat or 80% Democrat. So if our church becomes the Republican church for 30 years, I've been aware, then I ostracize 70, 80% of the people that I want to see get saved. So I'm careful not to make our church the Republican church. I don't want to be the enemy to those 80% of the people in our city. Where I will not be silent is abortion. I will speak about abortion. We will host abortion events that are, pregnancy care centers or whatever fundraising. We will go on record that we are against abortion no matter what you say about us. When it comes to the election, I spoke out just on the pro-life issue to our church alone. All of the drama of how you're going to vote, I'm voting pro-life alone. So I'm not going to shrink back from that message. When I was in Israel on October 7th, and when Israel, that horrible, tragic day that the hostages were taken into captivity into Gaza, I was there. And when I came home, President Biden made the strongest stand I've ever seen him make on he is supporting Israel. He is with Israel. He supports Israel. He's backing Israel. And I stood up on a Sunday morning and I played the video and I said, I've never been so proud of Joe Biden. People left our church. I knew it. I knew you were a Democrat lover or what. Like, really? We're so divided that we can never praise the other side when they do something right. That was admirable. That was, I was so proud of him that he was standing with Israel. And so I think it is a very, very complicated issue. And I think every church has to hear from the Lord. And every pastor has to hear from the Lord. And it's not easy. Remember, COVID felt like a knife blade. Like no matter what we did during COVID, you either failed this group, you fell off to that side, or you fell to the other side. Like you couldn't walk down the knife blade. And in some ways, it feels like politics is like that. It's just, you just can't please everybody. And so when President Trump was the assassination attempt, I stood in front of our town, our church, and our amphitheater, and I just said, aren't you so glad this man was not murdered? For anybody that you were hoping he would have been murdered, that's evil. That's satanic. That's murder is satanic. So we do, it is a very hard issue. I could say more, but I'm afraid my tongue would get me in trouble if I. It's a hard issue to speak on because it so easily divides. I did call Charlie Kirk a martyr on the Sunday after. And I'm so thankful for Charlie. I'm so thankful for his faith. I'm so thankful for his courage. I'm so thankful for all these video clips now that are just going viral that are so Jesus Christ gospel centered. But I also feel really, really sad in my heart, this kind of viral response that happened. If a church didn't mention Charlie, everyone's leaving their church. I grieved at those poor pastors that, for whatever reason, that Sunday, they didn't mention Charlie Kirk, and now videos are being made about him. People are leaving their church because they didn't mention Charlie. That's not right.
Painful.
It's that knife blade. Sometimes pastors just can't do what's perfect all the time. So politics is a very, very difficult issue. And to be really honest with you, 30 years I've been at Corvallis, I struggle sometimes. Have I been political enough? Have we been the salt in the light enough? Have we done enough where we should be more active in the community? I don't know. I struggle. You know, right now, our church, every week right now, it's so beautiful. 10, 12 people are getting saved every week in Corvallis, Oregon. And I know that's our greatest contribution, but I have not arrived. I'm even presently struggling. And I think you have to struggle too. And our church has to struggle, and your pastor has to struggle. And on that note, Ed, I'll let you struggle.
This is where when you distill the heritage of this little family of churches is so beneficial in teaching through the Bible verse by verse and learning the entirety of God's heart for humanity. And again, I always refer to my pastor who's gone home to be with the Lord, but he taught us in the heritage of this movement, the Bible verse by verse. And he taught us very clearly, just as the Bible does, we hold a dual citizenship with this priority. We are first citizens of the kingdom, and that informs our citizenship on earth. And what happens in these incendiary times and these difficult times when an assassination takes place of a very well-respected, used man of God, both in the political and the spiritual realm, a very strong brother in Christ, we have the temptation to flip our priorities and think of ourselves as citizens of earth first instead of citizens of heaven first. And when we do that, many, many mistakes can be made. So in my ministry, in answer to the question, my ministry is very careful. Not that I'm perfect at this, but I want to be very careful to emphasize in my teaching ministry and my pastoral ministry, my relationship with God first. And I want the people to understand that, because when your relationship with the Lord isn't first, then the other relationships will be, if you're not vertically right with the Lord, then all the horizontal. And times like these are very horizontal. Everybody's back and forth. And I want you to, I came back from a trip and shared with our church just to remind them that there's only one gospel. There isn't 2 or 3 or 4. The gospel is universal. And if you ever add anything to the gospel, it is no longer the gospel. So once you protect the gospel, it can inform all your other decisions as a leader. It can inform if you desire to have a more influence. Like my pastor was very influential. He had a ministry for politics and things. He was able in his ministry to create an environment where he could do that because he knew his church and he knew his community, and others pull back more conservatively. But if you're not being informed, if you're being informed by culture and by social media and by friends and perhaps someone in an environment that says, if you don't mention this, you're not a real pastor, well, the brother can't declare that over me because the brother doesn't know me. I wish he would ask me and call me before he declares publicly, if you don't mention this, you're not a good pastor. I may not be a good pastor, but that brother can't declare it over me because he doesn't know me or because I don't say something. I love my church and I love my Lord. And so that sense, when I heard we were away and when I heard of an assassination of a young man like that, because of who I am, I did not go straight politics at all. I went to his kids and his wife, and my heart just sunk to my feet to think of. And I went to my son and my grandson and his former wife who suddenly lost their husband. And that's where God has put me in the body. And if you choose another way, I would just hope that it's informed by the gospel, because anything attached to the gospel, as good as it might be, is not the power of God. The power of God is the gospel to change a life. And don't we have enough problems with the gospel moving forward than being attached by all these other things? But you have freedom to express yourself. You have freedom to engage in politics and to be involved, to run for office, but we don't have freedom to co-opt the gospel. It has to be on its own. It has to stand alone. What God is doing on the earth today is bigger than the current cultural events. Can I get an amen on that, please? It's bigger than that. It doesn't exclude that. And so when I think of politics in particular, this is what I think. I am very concerned with the political environment of our world today, because politics and politicians create policies, right, and laws. And those policies affect the very people that we are serving in our communities and reaching out to and loving in our church, believers and unbelievers alike. So I want you to think of that. I want to make it simple for you. Politicians create policies that affect people. But you have to be careful, because I'm answering the question the way it was asked. But that order should be reversed. And people should be at the top. Regardless of the politics, people should always be at the top of our list in how we choose to do ministry and how we use the Bible. And the Bible tells me that I'm a proclaimer of the gospel, and that I'm to step into people's lives, and I'm, to the best of my ability in my priorities, fight hard to keep your eyes on the Lord, because he'll tell you what to do. He'll lead you. I love the illustration you gave with the person that you met, because, oh man, if I can get your eyes on the Lord, then I'm really confident he's going to tell you what you want, what he wants you to do. But you and I, for those of us that are older, some of you are very young, but some of us that are older, we've seen the political maneuverings through the ages. Different one vote can change the whole direction. Even in our own state, has dramatically changed since I moved here politically, and that political persuasion since we moved here in 1999. And I guess you could say our church has changed too, as we've pressed harder into the gospel, because that's what changes lives. A man, a home, a community, a family, and then you begin to see it change. But in a broader answer to your question, you're free to do what you believe the Lord's calling you to do in your church, as long as it's not sin. And you'll have to sort that out. There's no explanation in the scripture specifically on your question. You have to ask the Lord for it, but you are not free to do something that would divert someone's attention from the true gospel. And as you keep your eyes on the Lord, then you can be assured that you're going to teach the Bible in such a way, you're going to honor people, you're going to, I always think about the gospel. If the gospel I'm preaching here in Aurora, Colorado, will not reach it will not mean anything to the people that I'm going to speak to in Nigeria, then it's not the gospel. So if I preach a political type gospel of a message in our country and I take it to Nigeria and I don't know what you're talking about, but if I preach the gospel about Jesus and him crucified, and I teach about him risen again from the dead, from here I can preach it there, and I can watch God work. So I think it's important to keep the Lord first, and then remember, when it comes to politics, it's people reflected the policies and the politicians. But of course we want righteous people to be in office. Of course we want people that will honor. Of course we want all that. But I find that the primary power of all that is through prayer and being able. And I agree, as I'm listening to you as well. I mean, it's so hard because you are wanting to keep people's eyes on the Lord, but opinions and ideologies start to create enemies of each other. And we're not enemies, even if we disagree. We're not enemies. And we are brothers and sisters in Christ, even if we have different disagreements. But what unifies us? We're striving to maintain the unity of the Spirit. The unity of the Spirit. So we're walking in the Spirit, we're going to be really enjoying life. So I hope that helps. But I was really encouraged by your answers. It was good.
Yeah, thank you for taking the extra time. I think that was something that needed to be addressed and talked about. And we did go over time. It wasn't answered in the quickness that we knew it wasn't going to be answered. So we're going to delay the session. Next session start, instead of 4 o'clock, it's going to start at 4:15. 4:15. I want to let you guys know, because we do have a lot of questions here. Many of these questions are going to be saved. We're going to address quite a bit of them on the next Lead to Serve podcast, Pastor Ed and Pastor Bob Claycamp that do that. So if you had a question that didn't get answered, be listening to the next season's podcast. So we're taking all these questions and we're going to start answering them in a ministry style way. So not every single one, because there's hundreds here, but there's quite a few.
If you haven't heard Bob Claycamp, Pastor Bob Claycamp, and you haven't subscribed or listened to the Lead to Serve, sitting in the office with him or in the studio with him, listening to him and his perspectives, it's like sitting with your grandfather, and he's telling you his whole life experience and just sharing his heart. And if you listen, you have to listen carefully, because every once in a while he'll give us a Bobism. And just this perspective that he has. And I'm looking forward to it. Bob doesn't even know. Is Bob in here? Where's Bob? He's taking a nap. I would take a nap.
We love you, Bob.
We love you, Bob. That's an Edism. But he's also available to minister to your church. He has a ministry that he works with Poiman Ministries, and also he started a ministry. He would love to be available to you. He does assessments, and he comes and fills pulpit and a lot of different things. So I'm looking forward to the season 2, what it comes out to.
Great. And then with that, I think some of these questions were also very apologetic, so very theological in nature. You have access to these pastors, but you also have access to a wealth of commentaries and knowledge that you can research kind of those verse by verse specific questions. We do try to keep the Q&As, especially if you've noticed the last few years, very ministry based and ministry oriented. So if you didn't get your question answered, that is the reason why. We want to make sure that we can speak to the crowd that's here, which are people that are serving regularly in church. But if it's more of a specific, you're wrestling with a verse, you can find these guys throughout the conference, and they'd love to answer your question. All right, so let's close it out. We'll be back here at 4:15. Thank you, guys.